Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Bar-Tzadok here from the Kosher Torah School, found online at www.koshertorah.com. Saludos and bendiciones desde Costa Rica. Still here, spying out the land, as the spies did in the olden days. Interesting country. It's got it's good and it's bad, but okay. We're here. We're looking around. We're doing what we need to do. And what's most important is Talmud Torah, the learning of our Holy Torah. And that is what we are here now to do. So, in our previous lessons, I gave you introduction material from Rabbi Hayim Sha'arei Kedusha. And being that right now I'm kind of like at the beach. I don't know if you can see here in the background. But and the beach, for some people, the beach is paradise. For me, it's nothing but a big mikvah. I go in, I go out, I'm done. Definitely not a beach person. Some of you guys are. Hey, God bless you. I'm a mountain man. You give me the mountains, I'm fine. Anyway, aside from all of that, gashmiut. Gashmiut means association with physicality stuff. And that's exactly what we need to talk about right now. Rabbi Hayim opens up the first section of Sha'arei Kedusha, the gates of holiness, again, which is his direction, his guide to help us expand beyond the matrix of physicality into the reality of our higher psychic reality. You can call those worlds spiritual, the worlds of heaven, the worlds of angels, or if you'd like modern terms, the world of extraterrestrials. They're all one and the same. They're not accessed by flying saucers and what are those things called? Stargates and vortexes. They're open and expanded through consciousness when we become aware of and integrated with the higher realities. This is what we call receiving Ruach HaKodesh. Right? That's why the name of the book is Sha'arei Kedusha, the gates of holiness. And we aspire to receive what we call that Ruach, that energy, which we call Kedusha. Well, in order to get that, Reb Hayim gives us very important basics to start with. And the first lesson he brings down in section 1, part 1 of Sha'arei Kedusha, is a very important, I will call it a reminder. And that is the nature of our sense of identity. Our modern, Western, secular, becoming more and more anti-religious world endeavors to identify identity of the individual with one's physical self, one's body. Now, we all know that the body is not actually you. It's called your flesh, your basar. Reb Hayim quotes different verses to validate this from, of course, the scriptures. But in the wise words of Master Yoda, luminescent beings are we, not this crude matter. Well, this is very important for us to understand. For those of you who are aware of what we call the different levels of soul in our Torah tradition, that which we know is the regular consciousness of this world, we call the Nephesh level of soul. That is the identity that I, or you, or any one of us take when we incarnate in these physical forms in this physical world. We cultivate and develop a Nephesh identity corresponding to our time here in this world. So what that means is this. I, you, all of us, are actual energetic realities. We are monads of energy, and we blend into a greater ocean of energy. Each one of us, like a drop of the ocean, comes and takes on a specific form as we come into this world. Now, that form takes on a specific identity. Now, that identity for me, for example, in this world right now is Ariel Sadok. Yours is wherever you are. But before my energy, my soul, my reality was disconnected at a point thereof from the higher, greater reality and put into this individual reality, from my neshama to my nefesh. Remember, it's never really disconnected, ever. That disconnection is a sense of illusion that we experience while here in Nephesh consciousness. And of course, our purpose is to erase that illusion, to recognize the unity that the Nephesh is part of the greater Neshama. So my Nephesh, my identity in this world, like I said, I'm Ariel. But who am I? I didn't want to use the word was I before I came into this body. I existed then. I'm going to exist after I leave the body. That is my true identity, my true name. And that name is not Ariel. So for example, when we read about the great sages and those who reincarnate, a point that Reb Hayim and others make, that when we reincarnate, it's not necessarily the person, the Nephesh, that reincarnates. All right, it could be just different parts thereof. That gets very technical from Shara Gilgulim. I discussed that in our, of course, 8 Gates of the Arizal course. It's available on Kosher Torah. But that's not the point right now. The point is, who am I? Who are you? Now, as long as we identify with this physical self, then we are not in awareness of our higher reality. And that is where we need to focus. And that, of course, what Sha'arei Kedusha and everything we teach at our Kosher Torah school is all about. Now, you might have heard an old Jewish legend that states that when you die, an angel comes to the grave and he asks you your name. And most people say, gee whiz, I forgot my name. And then the angel beats the snot out of you till you remember your name. It's called Hibut HaKever. Most people don't understand a clue as to what that really means. They're not, when the angel comes and asks you what's the name of your Nephesh that just died, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Ariel, or whatever. He wants you to remember the name of your true self, your Neshama. How many of us know our true identity, our true selves, our true name, which by all means is angelic by what we call it today. It is not Hebrew, it's not anything. Rabbi Yehuda Fatia speaks about these things in Minhat Yehuda, amongst other places. So know that this is true. So we need to remember our Neshama name, our higher selves true name. And when in the grave we forget it, as we didn't associate with that level of consciousness, and the representative says, okay, it's kind of like waking up from being in, what do they call, like anesthesia. Hey, do you remember yourself? Do you remember who you are? Do you remember where you are? No, I don't. Okay. Well, the angel really doesn't come and beat you up. Remember, you're just energy. But it does struggle to awaken you and make you more aware. That's the reality of Hibut HaKever. So Reb Hayim opens up Sha'arei Kedusha by reminding us, we are not this crude matter of the physical. We are the true higher selves. Now that association is vital to begin. And then he goes and discusses something very, very important. Again, subject to many misunderstandings. He states how that which we call the Nephesh, all right, the life force energy, where is it? We might want to think that the seat of consciousness is in the brain or in the mind, because that's where I think. You close your eyes and you say, where am I? In the body, you usually point to your head. But something that all people of spiritual paths have always known, all right, and even modern science kind of picking up on this now. That which we call the soul, be it the Nephesh or the Neshama, imbues the entire physical form. Your identity is in your fingers and your toes and every other part within you as much as it's in your head, because that's your life force energy. That is the consciousness thereof. As such, this awareness is something that in meditation we seek to expand, especially for those who've ever practiced the spiritual-based martial arts. Not just punching, kicking, karate stuff, but those who've gotten into the real spiritual essence of martial arts. They try to feel what they call, and at least in the Chinese tradition, the qi that flows through every part of you. Okay? So this concept is well known, and we seek the cultivation of the awareness of it. So it's not just something that you think in your head, but actually something you can experience in your reality. That's the important thing thereof. Obviously, we have whistlers here on the beach. But okay, continuing now. Reb Hayim states that this soul of which we speak, which, as we know from traditional rabbinic beliefs and ideas, is that there are 613 commandments to the body, as we very well know, and that these 613 commandments are divided between the positive and the negative. And we say that there are 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. And one can look in traditional rabbinic literature of Maimonides or Nachmanides, Ramban, for an elaboration of these mitzvot. There are other books that also elaborate the commandments one by one. But Rebbe Hayim, amongst the other Kabbalists, state that to each and every one of these commandments, there is a corresponding part in the human soul. Now, some will expand that and say in the human body. So, we correspond the 248 positive commandments, we say, to the organs, the 365 negative commandments to the sinews. But no book that I know of in all Judaic literature actually elaborates 613 commandments to 613 specific body parts. You have the famous moralistic text, Sefer Haredim, which correlates some to the eyes, to the ears, to the heart. You know, the basic stuff, mostly from a moralistic point of view, musar. But deeper than that, no. And why? Simply because this is a metaphor. It is lemashal, or as we say in Hebrew, lo kipshuto. Why? Because Reb Hayim elaborates and states that we have to fulfill all 613 commandments of the Torah, and they correspond to the 613 parts of the soul. And for each and every mitzvah or commandment that we do not observe, we are blemished by the energy from that mitzvah not coming into our soul or not coming into our physical body. So therefore, the 613 commandments of the Torah correspond to the 613 elements of the soul, and each and every commandment that you do not observe blemishes an aspect of your soul. That is the pshat of what he says. Pshat meaning just the literal stuff. Now you can say, oh my gosh, I better start doing more commandments to complete everything. Well, let me get it to you straight here. Never in human history since the days of Moshe Rabbeinu has any single human being ever fulfilled in a single lifetime all 613 commandments. It is impossible. That's the truth of it, whether you like it or not. Why? Go look at the enumerations of the commandments. Some of the commandments are specifically for women and not for men. Some are specifically for priests, kohanim, and not for laymen. Some are specifically for the high priest and not for anyone else. Some are specifically for the king and no one else. Some are under the most unique and abstract circumstances and none other. So, with regards to all of this, you might say, well, how do I fulfill the commandments of being a high priest or a king? You can't. Now you can say, well, maybe I will reincarnate and become a king or a high priest, and at that moment I'll fulfill the commandment. Yeah, well, you got millions and millions of souls. All of them are going to become reincarnated as high priests? All of them reincarnated as kings? I don't think so. Well, according to the Kabbalists, maybe you can have a piggyback reincarnation, an ibur, in which a million sparks of a soul will piggyback onto the soul of the high priest or the king while he fulfills the commandment, and then we fulfill it with it. This is all well and good, nice to think, and maybe that's the way it is, and maybe it's not. Our sages say that by studying Torah and the laws of these things, it's as if you fulfilled it, all well and good and fine. But recognize, like I said, this is lo kepshuto. This is not literal. The commandments of our Torah are sacred, and they are archetypal. And that is why we can look into these ancient, archaic applications written 3,500 years ago and extract from them modern meaning, modern intent, because they are quantum in nature, and that they don't, or I shouldn't say, are not limited to a single understanding. That is why the entire ocean of Torah literature is so vast, and why we have so many different applications of halakha, and why halakha is not guided or directed by heaven, but is directed and guided by us here on earth to apply it in our specific circumstances, situations. Lo b'shamayim hi. But we each fulfill the energetic element of the mitzvot. The Baal Shem Tov writes about this very clearly when he states that if you can touch the deepest essence of a mitzvah, in which you're doing things what we call b'tchilu arhimu, for the sake of the love and awe of God, for the sake of unifying, which really means for the sake of expanding your mind, your soul, to become aware of the greater consciousness that we spoke of earlier, reconnecting the Nefesh to the Neshama. If your mitzvot observance are fulfilling this purpose, you got it. And if not, then you just don't. And a point that Rabbi Hayim Vital makes, he says, if you don't get this, you will reincarnate until you do. So, this is what we need to understand. When it comes to all Torah observance, recognize it not as individual parts that need to be filled, but as a concentric whole. And we seek to embrace the unity of Torah. We seek to make it our most important focus on life. So, if you can see behind me all the wonder and beauty of the ocean and the like, all right, you see all this fancy stuff. Like I said, for some people, paradise. For me, it's just a big mikvah. I'm not a beach person. Gashmiut for me. Understand and emphasize to focus on the Kedusha. Everything here is Kedusha. Even whistling Dixies over there, and people walking around here in pritzut, meaning immodest attire. All is from God. And when you transcend and go beyond the limitations, and you see the unity of Hashem in all things, then you're getting to tap into the true Torah and the true essence of all the mitzvot. So on that note, let me conclude here this introduction into, again, the Helek Rishon. Remember, you are a being of light. Everything out here is just a garment. And if you focus on the garment instead of the being, you're missing the point. Get focused, do what's right, observe mitzvah. If you're Jewish, then you have to observe the Torah mitzvot according to our rituals of observance in Torah Judaism. Sorry, all these other modern aberrations, not kosher, as we will say. But focus on God. God will guide you to the truth. And that is the most important thing in the conclusion of today's lesson. Ariel Bar Tzadok here, wishing you blessings and all good things from Costa Rica. And again, keep focused on Hashem, and I'll see you at our next classes. Shalom.